Matthew Crawford here. Let's fly helicopters with an Xbox controller in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. It is possible. Stay with me for a complete tutorial on how helicopters work with the Xbox controller and how you can adapt the settings on that controller to make your life so much easier. To get things started, let's talk about the three main controls we have over the helicopter. The collective control, where I can raise the collective and the helicopter will lift up. And I lower the collective and the helicopter will sink down. Then I've got the pedals, the anti-torque pedals. A bit of right pedal will turn the nose of the helicopter to the right. This is very sensitive, this controller. And a bit of left pedal will take the nose to the left. Let's get that centered again. Cyclic, that is the stick right in the main position there. The stick that will, with a bit of right, cyclic will translate the helicopter to the right, and with a bit of left will translate the helicopter to the left. Get it back in the middle again. And forwards and backwards does this. Forward pitches the nose down, which allows the helicopter to gain speed forwards, and back lifts the nose and either cancels that forward motion or gives us reverse motion even. So collective, cyclic, and the pedals are the three things we're going to be talking about in this video. Alright, so let's set this thing up. Now we would need to choose where, and I have chosen Queenstown in the beautiful South Island Southern Alps of New Zealand, and when we zoom in we can see, yes, we've got a convenient east-west runway here for the jet arrivals and departures, a north-south runway which is suitable for general aviation, and when we zoom even closer in we can see that with these taxiways here for the smaller aircraft we find a rectangle that is going to be quite useful for our practice purposes. So what I will do is click in here, I will set that as our departure, and in this drop down up here, I will choose our starting point as on the ground ready for takeoff. That's new to 2024 and is super helpful. So on the ground ready for takeoff. I've chosen the Cabri G2. This is the leading training helicopter in many parts of the world, and it's a fabulous addition to MSFS 2024. And it's a great place for us to start developing our helicopter skills with the Xbox controller. Flight conditions, I'm going to choose few clouds as a preset. I don't want any wind, just to keep things simple for this demonstration. Air traffic, that's going to be off. Multiplayer, no, I don't need anything else distracting us from our important task of getting our controllers sorted out. Now, something that is worth thinking about is what assistances you want to have turned on or not. So, for all of my videos, I have everything turned off. I want it as real as possible. However, for the purposes of working with helicopters with an Xbox controller, I want to have a couple of things switched on. The assisted cyclic, which helps to cancel out translational movements left, right, forwards, backwards, that are going to make it difficult to handle on the controller. And absolutely essential on a controller like this, assisted tail rotor. Now, the tail rotor is a whole special thing in helicopters, and like there are just videos upon videos on anti-torque rotors, how to manage them, what they do, how you can get yourself into trouble with them. So let's just cut all of that. We'll tick that to yes. It does give a rather harsh cutoff to anti-torque pedal inputs, as we saw in that little preview I posted as part of this video. But look, it's going to help you. Leave it on. Everything else here, well, up to you, but I've turned it off. The only thing I have turned on is to disable crash damage, because when you're learning, give yourself a chance. You're going to bounce off the ground a couple of times, pretend it's a big trampoline or something, no worries. So I'm going to disable crash damage and give ourselves the best chance to learn these skills. Let's get into it. Okay, we are on the ground. Our orientation is like that in our grassy rectangle practice area. I'm going to try out what it's like with the default Xbox controller settings. So it might help actually if I just get the input viewer ready up here. Put that over there. Good. All right. I am doing this on Windows, so I get the luxury of being able to choose options like that. So to lift, we need to add some A key. So I'm hitting the A key. That's going to raise the collective. You can see on the input viewer, it's coming up. On the collective lever, it's coming up. And what we do on the Cabri is that we watch the multiple limit indicator here. It's currently sitting on 51% now after I've lifted the collective. And as I lift it some more, we're going to take note of when it becomes, there it is there, light on the skids, 64%. A little bit more. Okay. 67%. 67, alright. It's just floating along there okay. I'm just nudging it forward a bit on the Cyclic to hold the position. The Cyclic assistance is not quite doing everything there. I will add a couple more steps on the collective. There is an argument to put the collective on an axis, but at the moment I'm just using the default, which is that it's on the A and B keys on the controller. 71%, and notice it was raising and raising, but then it just stopped, and that is a well-known helicopter phenomenon. So if I go back down to 71% on the multiple limit indicator, it's descending, 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 but then it stops. Why is that? Why does it stop here about a rotor's diameter up from the ground? Well, that's ground effect. It's a great demonstration of it. If all I did was I just added collective and then I reduced it, and then now I'm sitting on this invisible cushion of the ground effect. It happens when we get within a rotor's diameter of the ground, and that's what's happening here now. So we are very stable now, thanks to, although now we're dropping. I'll just give it another click on the A key. Right, let's introduce the next control, the tail rotor control, which snaps right back to the center after I complete a movement with the right triggers. So it's the left and right triggers that we're dealing with here. And that's good. Now I'm looking up to the end of our rectangle here. So now I want to move forwards, and that's going to be a gentle push forward on the Cyclic. Here it comes. We're underway. I'm hardly moving that stick, by the way. I really am hardly moving it. Now, I don't want to exceed our rectangle here, so I will release that. We pop up into the air somewhat with that gained energy that we received from that movement. I'll just go forwards a bit more to get to the end. These are all maneuvers that you could try for yourself. Lowering the collective now to get back down to that comfortable... Oh, it's really dropping now, isn't it? Okay, just I had to add in a few more steps on the collective, raising the collective. Good. I'm pitching forward very slightly on the Cyclic. That's just like a millimeter or two on that controller. Helicopters are a real balance. When you take energy away from one control, or when you add energy to that control, it takes it away from another. And so sometimes you can find yourself dropping when you have added... Now we're getting into a bit of what I'm going to hopefully solve in a minute for you, which is this oversensitivity. So that's 74% on the multiple limit indicator, the MLI right now, 71. And I just saved us from banging into the ground too hard. And we are doing okay, although it's all very sensitive and I have to use very tiny motions on all of the controls. That's the default setup. Let's just sit on the ground and then we'll plan our next steps. Lowering the collective, bit hard. I'll try that again. Well, because I had no choice because it popped up by itself. Down, 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 down. Better. Hit the right skid in these European helicopters is the one that hits first. An American helicopter, it would be the left skid that hits first. That's all because of the direction that the tail rotor or anti-torque rotor thrusts. And so now let's look at what happens when we adjust the sensitivity in our Xbox controller. So to do that, we're going to need to get into a menu, and the way to get into the menu bar that runs across the top of the MSFS 2024 screen is to hold down the right bumper and to click down on the left stick. And that gives us this effect here so that we can access the controls here. So when I did the first part of the video, I had this down, although do you know what, I'm now going to swap to the mouse because, you know, I have the luxury of Windows. So that's just a right bumper, left click again, and then we're back in this mode. Okay, so I had initially on the default helicopters control. This is what would happen when you plugged in or when you enabled your Xbox controller with this piece of software. It generated this controller presets config for you, Gamepad 2024 helicopters. And when I changed anything at all, it prompts me to save this as a new preset config. And when I did that, I selected as a name Helicopters All. Very creative, right? Very creative indeed. Helicopters All. And so the sorts of things that I was changing, because I tried to stay with the Microsoft Asobo defaults as closely as I could, the things I changed were the sensitivities. And let's look at them. It's logical to think that if you were to look at the hardware settings over here and scroll through these, that when you change the sensitivities on here, that it would flow through to the controls that lie beneath. But no, there's a whole other layer, which I'm just going to have to demonstrate to you. So to do this, we need to look at the actual sensitivity curves on individual controllers. This sounds like it might be incredibly complicated, but it's actually quite powerful. What it means is that one controller, for instance, the left stick on the Xbox controller, can speak to multiple control inputs. For instance, the cyclic lateral axis, and others as well, the views and other things. So what this system that I'm about to show you allows is for you to control the sensitivity individually across all of those different destinations. So let's look at the most obvious one. Search by input. What I'm going to do is go left gently on the cyclic or the left stick on the Xbox controller, and now it shows me what destinations that source is going to. And the one I'm interested in this case is the set cyclic lateral axis. These other two are more to do with things like slewing or views. But no, the one I'm interested in is this one. So I'm going to find the cog over here. And note that in this menu in here, yes, I can change the control that feeds to it, or I can use this menu here, among which I find the tweak action curve. And it's in here that you see the magic, such as I've applied it, occurs. I have lowered the sensitivity radically for each of these two sides of the axis. It so happens that on some of the axes, for instance, the left trigger, you would only be using half of this, and for the right trigger, you'd only be using the other half. That's what my research has shown thus far. I've had the input viewer up and I've tried tweaking all of these things with that open, and that's sort of what I have discovered. The dead zone, I have also discovered, doesn't seem to do a whole lot in here, but if you've got a controller that's either causing a bit of jitteriness or flickering in the control inputs, just put it up to a low value first and see how it works. I've just got mine on 0.1. I'm sure it's going to be fine like that. But yeah, we want to see this. What this means, a setup like this means that you have a lot of resolution in the middle of the controller's initial range. So if I move my left stick to about 50%, it looks like I'm only getting 10 or 15% left deflection on the cyclic lateral axis. And that's just fine, because I promise you, all of the action in helicopters happens in the middle here. It's better to have resolution here than it is to have it all the way out here. And then you just go through the different things. There's 4 to change, okay? So we have done the lateral axis, which is the left and right on the left stick. Search by input. I'll now push the stick up and we look at set cyclic longitudinal axis, and I look, it does need to be inverted, which it is by default. Tweak action curve, minus 0.8 on both. Dead zone is the same, that's good, minus 0.9 on that one. Go back, and then we've got 2 more. The left trigger controls the rudder axis left, and I again go into the cog, I go into tweak action curve, I've put it all exactly the same, minus 0.8 sensitivity, dead zone 0.1, which just leaves one more. Search by input, it's the right trigger, which controls rudder axis right, cog, tweak action curve, minus 0.8 on both sides. Well, that probably only takes into account this one from what I've discovered, and a little bit of dead zone. All the same. All the same. So that's easy. So let's see what effect all of these have. And here we are in our nice stable hover once more, so let's get back onto the controls. Right, what can we do to test this out? We can give ourselves a little nudge sideways with the Cyclic. It's still only a couple of millimeters there. Couple of millimeters the other way. The Cyclic assist is helping us here. It's not letting us slide further over after we release it. So I've released it there and then it straightens us out. That's what the Cyclic assist is doing. The pedals, yes, I'm still finding those very twitchy. That's just the way it is, but it's a little bit improved. I can just use a tiny bit there to effect that small amount of change. We could just rock forward slightly to gain some speed, back to cancel it, and to move backwards. That's good. That's good. That's an improvement. If you're still finding this tricky, there is one more thing you can do. So back here in the control settings for your Xbox controller under the cyclic lateral axis, you could try also introducing in the tweak action curve some extremity dead zone. And that kind of just strips out the outer limits of the range there. So let's just try 0.4. And we will do the same on the longitudinal. 0.4 on the extremity, and let's see what that is like. Yes. Even smoother. Because you don't need to use, I mean, if I jam it all the way forward on the just as I did briefly there, on the input viewer, you see it doesn't actually allow you to, with that extremity dead zone, doesn't allow you to make the full use of the range of motion there. The full input only gets stuck there at about, looks like about 60%. But that's good because you're not using the cyclic stick in the helicopter like that. And let's try it in the rudder axis as well. So here's the right trigger. We will introduce extremity dead zone of 0.4, and we will do the same on the left trigger. Tweak action curve, extremity zone 0.4, and I'm finding that much nicer. Still can be quite sudden, but I think these extremity dead zones, if the sensitivity is not reducing the sensitivity curve, that is, it's not quite doing the trick for you, then try that as well. Staying within the bounds of our practice area here. Let's see if we can slide on the other side of that taxiway sign. Lowering the collective. Getting backwards there a bit. Good. Reintroducing the cyclic, the collective, I should say. Lowering the collective. And pushing the machine forwards to, I suppose, orbit that Charlie arrow sign for the taxiway, the Charlie taxiway. And so what you're going to need to do is just develop your skills with a bit of work like this. Find a good practice spot over some grass. See how successful you can be with doing simple maneuvers like this. To improve your hovering skills in the helicopter with your Xbox controller. Can be done. I'll do another video sometime for actually flying a circuit, but I'll just give you a quick spoiler alert here. What I'm going to do is show you the Cyclic trim real quick. So the Cyclic trim, when we get moving, is going to prevent us from, or save us from having to hold the Cyclic forward the entire time as we gather speed. So without me actually leaving our practice area here, holding down the right bumper and then moving the right stick, you can see the little X moving in my input viewer there. The X is now forward, and it means, see, we're inching forward. That's good. And then I can cancel that by moving that back to the center, or by holding down the right bumper and pushing in to cancel any trim that has been applied. So when you're cruising along, rather than having to hold the Cyclic stick forward the whole time, like what I'm showing you right now, you can use the Cyclic trim, hold down that bumper, push the right stick forward, trim has been applied, I'll cancel that immediately, right bumper, clicking in once more cancels the trim that was applied. So I really hope that's going to help you with your helicopter flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 with the Xbox controller. Give yourself a bit of time, change those sensitivity settings, and see how you go. I reckon you can do it. I'm backing you. Come on. Hey, thanks for staying with me for this. If this was useful to you, like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. See ya.